Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, my friends, welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. It's Wednesday. It's July the 9th. And we are under a gag order. There will be no discussion, not in the chat, not in the, this is what happens if I don't put my phone in the Faraday bag. Sorry. Not in the chat, not in the discussion section, not in the comments, please. The gag order is imposed. We will not be talking about Jeffrey Epstein. We won't be talking about the Epstein files, the lack of prosecution. We won't be talking about the video that's missing a minute. That's totally no big deal. And we're totally not going to be talking about the things. It's time to move on. We need to move on from the Epstein thing. Why do we need to move on? Maybe because Donald Trump said that he couldn't believe that we're still talking about this in the White House yesterday. Maybe because all of the programs that are on the quote unquote conservative side, but let's just call them the MAGA cheerleader types, got phone calls saying, let's move on. There's a lot of wins, so we need to focus on those. Please do not talk about this. If you had a media appearance, if you're an FBI person, you can't talk about Epstein. That's actually not what we're going to have you on. We're going to talk about a new investigation. It's very, very exciting. And the investigation is into Jim Comey and Brennan. Aren't you excited? There's been an investigation, a probe even, announced. Give you a little tip right here. Whenever you see that the FBI is announcing an investigation into someone, that is a load of horse manure. Investigations don't get announcements. They don't get press releases. Indictments do. The termination of an investigation might have one. But investigations are done in quiet because you don't need to tell the subject that you open an investigation, unless you're just looking for the headline, which Fox News seems to do. We're back to the laser pointer theory. We're back to follow the shiny dot on the ground. Please, 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 America, act like a cat and attack the dot that we show you. Do not pay attention to the hand that is moving it. So we're definitely not going to be talking about Epstein today because that would be something we ought not to do. You guys know exactly how much I care about doing what we're told. So it's going to be a fun show, is all I'm getting at. We're going to do a slew of headlines and news that have been going on for the last couple days. We're going to cover down on all of those. We're going to discuss the thing that needs to be discussed towards the end. And again, I think that we're going to try to do a little cut through some media analysis of what's going on. It is interesting to see people on the political left are jumping in right now. And now they are very interested in child sex trafficking. They are suddenly quite interested in discrediting this current DOJ. We can say the same things as people that we don't agree with for different reasons. I'm going to refer to this as like the Massey rule. Maybe you guys should start remembering that we do this. Just because I find myself on the same side or you find yourself on the same side as people that you normally disagree with doesn't mean that you now are on their side. What it means is that your principles align and they're probably doing it for a different reason, possibly less genuine than yours. Let's go with that. Before we get started, let's talk about my friends over at Patriot Protect. If you guys want to protect yourself from scams, this is a real problem. From data leaks, which are ongoing. Our government is terrible at a lot of things, not just investigating Jeffrey Epstein. That couldn't leak. What will happen is they'll leak all your passwords, your name, or maybe your OPM file so that all of your background information goes to the Chinese. If you're worried about stuff like that, you want to be protected from data breaches, whether it be the AT&T data breach, which had 184 million logins and credentials, names, passwords, email addresses, etc. If you want to protect yourself from that, if you want to know if your stuff is being sold on the dark web, you can work with folks like Patriot Protect. The website is patriot-protect.com/KYLE, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. You'll save 15% on an annual subscription. They have two services that are working out there on your behalf 24/7, scanning, looking for your information, trying to get your stuff taken down from the data brokers. That part's pretty easy because it's in the open, so they can do all of the background to get you off the list of people who will get a scam call, phishing emails, spear phishing emails, and so on. And then the second part is finding out if your stuff's getting sold on the dark web. And they have a blackout service that goes and constantly scans the dark web looking to see if you are part of one of the breaches or data packets being sold. Again, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. It's a few dollars a month. It's cheaper than dropping your coffee cup at Starbucks or Dunkin' or whatever it is that you guys buy coffee at if you're not a home buyer. It's an inexpensive solution to just keep you out of the pile so that you don't have to be a victim. The less chances they have to target you, the better. Again, patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Link in the show description. I am pointing downward. If you are listening, you are missing that. Let's get into today's program where we're definitely not going to break the gag order. All right, you guys know I like to try to cut fair if we can do it. So let's talk about some wins. Let's talk about some losses. Let's talk about some frustrations that we might have. This one is actually quite frustrating. In the wake of the Supreme Court doing a 6-3 decision saying that district court judges cannot and shall not block things that the executive does. In fact, there was a really good little hit by Stephen Miller on CNN the other day, which I won't play for you now. But the summation of it was, there is no provision in the United States Constitution that every time the executive makes a decision, they are supposed to run it by the judiciary. It's not supposed to go to the judicial branch. There's nothing in the Article 2 powers that says, make sure that the Article 3 powers are cool with what you had to say. Particularly the inferior courts, as we well pointed out, the lower courts are referred to as sort of transient in the Constitution, that they will be established from time to time. Not that there's some sort of permanent bureaucracy that's going to be a referee on every single decision that comes out nationwide. But a federal judge has decided to block Donald Trump from cutting off Planned Parenthood funding under the quote-unquote Big Beautiful Bill, or the OBBA. A judge on Monday temporarily barred the Trump administration from revoking Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood, partially freezing a provision of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act just days after Donald Trump signed it into law last week. The temporary restraining order was produced by this is great. I'm sorry, I didn't even read this beforehand, the name. U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani. Just going to leave it there for a second. I know a lot of Indiras, so I just want to say this is the Talwani variety of the Indiras. Indira. I don't think I've ever seen that name before. That's interesting. It lasts for 14 days, and it directs the Department of Health and Human Services to, quote, take all steps necessary to ensure that Medicaid funding continues to be dispersed to Planned Parenthood. I don't remember judges actually have anything to say about whether or not money gets dispersed. That's an executive function. How they decided they step into this, beyond me. The ruling came after a lawsuit from Planned Parenthood, no surprise, where they used donor money and government money to fight against our interests as people. It doesn't apply to any other healthcare providers. The lawsuit takes aim at a portion of Trump's signature domestic policy, which would cut off any federal Medicaid funding to groups that, quote unquote, primarily engage in family planning services, reproductive health, and related medical care. They added, they being CBS News, that provide abortions. The provision doesn't even mention Planned Parenthood by name, but the group argues that it is a naked attempt to leverage the government's spending power to attack and penalize Planned Parenthood and impermissibly single it out for unfavorable treatment because our money must be used to kill babies in this satanic version of reality that these people live in. I got into a discussion the other day about people dying in America, and it was with some friends, and it was like, there's a lot of people that die in America for all these things, and we've done all this stuff, and I'm like, how about babies? How about everyone talks about babies are people right up until they start dealing with, statistics about people dying in America. 500,000 to 1 million is just it's an unfathomable amount of lives that you can't even consider, and it generally gets brushed aside. That wasn't the only sort of court ruling. There was a story about the Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Trump administration. We got a little win, which is to say, the thing that should have been happening all along, we know there's a mechanism to do it. It's suspension, pending termination. How do you know that's a real thing, Kyle? Oh, because I experienced it. Because I have a couple of friends that you might find on this podcast and other times who also experienced it. There are tactics and techniques that every single federal agency has to remove personnel. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't go to the courts. How interesting that the court sided and said, yeah, you can actually do mass layoffs. And so Fox News was reporting on that. Supreme Court went in an 8-1 decision. You're going to be shocked to find out that the most talkative and least informed member, and probably also shortest member of the Supreme Court, she's like a weird, dumb midget. I'm sure I'm going to have to take flack for that later, but I actually stand by that statement. Ketanji Jackson Brown was the lone dissenting voice that the executive could not fire people who work for the executive. Fox News reporting that SCOTUS decision here.
Breaking moments ago, the Supreme Court with a decision that will allow the Trump administration to move ahead with their plans to cut the federal workforce, at least for now. Justice correspondent David Spott, give us the backstory here, reporting live from Washington. Hi, David.
Hi, Martha. A nice Tuesday afternoon win for the Trump administration. And it's funny because the justices normally are on their summer recess right now. Doesn't mean they don't work behind the scenes, but these justices have been busy because of these executive orders and the way they've made their way through the legal process. But this right now is a order from the Supreme Court essentially saying that a San Francisco judge who put a stop to the Trump administration from cutting several federal agencies, they're saying that the Trump administration, in fact, right now can continue forward as the case plays out on its merits. So essentially back in May, several different agencies sued. They said that the Trump administration wanted to make cuts at the Departments of Agriculture, Commerce, Defense, Energy, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, HUD, Justice, Labor, State Treasury, and Transportation, pretty much all of them. Now the Supreme Court is giving the Trump administration victory some almost 6 months into the president's second term here, saying that they can go forward with these reductions in forces. You may remember that this was part of the DOGE effort when Elon Musk was still hanging out around the White House. But President Trump today, Martha, during the cabinet meeting, said that some of those DOGE moves made sense, were important. And this was a campaign promise and a promise really of this presidency to cut some of these federal agencies. And now this administration can feel vindicated from the Supreme Court as
They don't need to feel vindicated. The chief executive should be able to do this stuff, and they probably shouldn't even have to worry about this kind of nonsense. You rarely ever see people, though, get removed from federal service. It just doesn't happen in the same ways. And they say sometimes that it even takes an act of Congress. That's sort of like the thing that's bandied around. It turns out it's actually pretty easy if there's the motivation. If there's a will and a way, then it actually gets done. The Biden administration got rid of thousands of service members in really, really nasty form, in ways that might destroy their lives because of the DD-214s that they were issued. And also a bunch of us who were in the federal service that were in the civilian side of things. Pretty ugly. You don't often see a reduction in this stuff. You don't often see the federal workforce reduced or federal programs go away. But here is another example of that. The TSA apparently is going to be ending the shoes off policy for airport screening nearly 20 years after instituting it. Of course, popped up because of a man who attempted to smuggle a bomb in his shoes, which meant that all of us might be doing a bomb in the shoes. That's the famous case of Richard Reed, who tried to blow up an American Airlines flight from Paris to Miami. And in 2006, TSA's stupid policy of sliding off and walking through a metal detector in socks began. This is supposed to roll out to all airports. I'm just going to read you from the ABC story here. Nearly 20 years after the airline passengers were first required to remove shoes for a security policy, the policy is being phased out. They've caught exactly 0 things, as far as I'm aware of, in the shoes. Otherwise, they would continue this and argue for it. The TSA, my least favorite government agency, or damn near the top of the list, is planning to allow passengers to keep the shoes on when they go through general security. Another sign that for 20 years, the terrorists won in America. I added that editorial part, obviously. In an unexpected memo, it went out to TSA officers across the country last week, stating the new policy will allow passengers to keep their shoes on in all screening lanes at many airports. The goal is that the new policy will roll out to all U.S. airports shortly. Previously, only passengers in TSA PreCheck were able to keep their shoes on in most cases. Another indication about how dumb this is. Transportation Administration, an agency, has spent years looking for innovative ways to allow passengers to move faster through the security checkpoints. The best way would be for them to have a ritual seppuku where the agency stopped being what it is. If you've ever worked on the outside of a TSA screening line, which I did in a professional law enforcement capacity, you'll know that these are some of the least aware people that you'll ever find. There was a funny show I remember. It was called Lie to Me. And the guy goes and finds a female Hispanic TSA officer who is a super sleuth screener and can recognize body language and all these other things because she followed her training and she was an intuitive person knower. And then they brought her into the thing and they paid her a ton of money to become like this like human lie detector expert. And it was always nonsense because the TSA people that you see are basically phoning it in. They're a human repeat recording box that says the same words 10,000 times a day, and they kind of hate their life. And they wear a fake badge with no gun. It's just, all of it's theatrical. It is the greatest example of security theater that you can find. Another quick headline here talking about people with actual badges. This is the Border Patrol. A man was killed in gunfire with Border Patrol agents. This just happened day before yesterday. And give me 1 second here. We're having some fun stuff on my end of my computer. I love it. Man killed in exchange of gunfire with Border Patrol agents in Texas. There were a Border Patrol agent and 2 other officers were injured. That's not great news. Man was killed on the southern border of Texas near McAllen. They got a call for reporting shots fired. The FBI released a statement. This is regular fare for the FBI, by the way. This is the kind of thing that the FBI normally does on any given day. They'll tout it like it's something new. But the FBI investigates what are called assault on a federal officer. In this case, it resulted in the death of the subject. The city of McAllen identified him as Ryan Luis Mosqueda. His last known address was in Michigan. He's 27 years old. He was an armed suspect, a male suspect, engaged law enforcement officers at the scene, and the officers then returned fire. He was transported to, or he wasn't transported. I think he died on scene. The responding officer that was injured in the fire was actually transported to a local hospital and is reported to be stable. This is part of like what looks like a slight trend in taking pot shots at Border Patrol, DHS, ICE, and people that are attempting to do the immigration sort of mission set that exists. And this is a kind of a dangerous trend as well. The reason I say that is because it's pretty clear. There's a couple of other people that have done it. There was an Antifa cell. This is being reported on Laura Ingram's show, so I'll let her talk about it in just a second here. But an organized effort, distractionary tactics, almost a dozen people that were involved. And they went and they lured officers out to handle a vandalism incident. And then somebody opened fire on them. Looks like they're all in custody from what I can tell. They were dressed in tactical gear, so this kind of thing. But this is a kind of an escalation on there. You've also seen maybe some stories talking about this app. It's called the Ice Block app, where you can actually report ongoing raids where immigration and customs people are doing that deportation. There's even official cover for that going on in places like Los Angeles. We'll play a little bit from Karen Bass and her sort of nonsense she did at MacArthur Park the other day. I'll also show you some footage of MacArthur Park and why anybody acting like this is a beautiful park that's being invaded by federal troops is sort of ridiculous. Here's Laura Ingraham talking about this coordinated attack, which I do think is concerning. The question is it one little cell of people that are idiots and they've gotten their lesson, or are they going to escalate and move to the next step?
Tonight, we're getting stunning new details about how they did it. They were clad in black tactical gear. The complaint says the group lured DHS corrections officers outside by shooting fireworks at the detention center building. So agents called 911, and then they went outside to investigate and talk to the suspects. A few minutes later, an Alvarado police officer arrived on the scene. The moment he stepped out of the car, a gunman who was hidden in the woods opened fire, struck him in the neck. At the exact same time, another gunman started shooting at the DHS officers. 20 to 30 rounds from an AR-15 style rifle were shot. Those officers are all blessed to be alive tonight. A jammed AR style rifle was found at the scene. Now imagine how many could have been murdered. So what?
I hate that they do that. Imagine what? Yes, no, it's totally awful. It shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't have people out there targeting law enforcement. Law enforcement needs to have high situational awareness. Obviously, that's the case. The folks involved, I think they've caught like 11 of them so far, and having multiple gunmen stationed on there and opening fire in an ambush. Worst case scenario. It is showing you that there are people that are getting after this, that are upset about what's going on. This is a story from NBC News. Troops and federal agents briefly descended on Los Angeles MacArthur Park in a largely immigrant neighborhood. It's also a largely meth-headed neighborhood from everything we can tell, and people that are zonked out on the streets. There's tons of homeless people, like all parks now in the state of California. They've been overrun by people who are not allowing the public to use it. But of course, you got to defend those people. No real clear reason why. It's another sort of example of these folks not interested in their constituents and more interested in, like, I don't know, virtue signaling points or the suicidal empathy. Federal officers and National Guard troops panned out across the mostly empty Los Angeles park in a largely immigrant neighborhood. Again, I don't know how that has anything to do with anything in an operation that the local officials seem to believe was designed to sow fear. Department of Homeland Security wouldn't say whether anyone was arrested during the brief operation. It did give an opportunity, not for the dog and pony show by the federal troops or the guys that were showing up on horseback at the DHS types folks. No, it gave an opportunity for the mayor of Los Angeles, former Congresswoman Karen Bass, to do what commies do, which is go out there and virtue signal in nonsense and kind of like play with words. Here's a word game press conference she gave, and then I'll show you. She actually told the federal officers they had to leave, an authority she doesn't possess, and then apparently got on the phone with somebody senior from either Customs or DHS, and people have speculated possibly Tom Homan. So I'll play you both those clips real quick. Here's the press conference.
Well, I call it a political stunt. If you want to call it a dog and pony show, go right ahead. Same thing.
With this going on for more than a month now, are you starting to feel like you're not even in control of the situation, or is there a feeling of helplessness?
No, I will never feel helpless, and I don't think anybody here feels helpless. That's not in our DNA. We're going to continue fighting.
Summer of resistance. Started the summer.
It's kind of interesting when somebody makes the accusation of the exact thing that they're doing. Call it a dog and pony show, call it a political stunt. What would you call this? Because this looks a lot like a political stunt to me, going out in a nice sort of polished suit and presentation, and she's going to try to stop like a bunch of grown men with rifles. By the way, check out the rifle this guy's carrying. Kind of interesting. It's got an ACOG on there. It's one of my favorite optics if you're going to do it, as long as you got an RMR on top or a little 1x magnified window so you can do things close and far. Anyway, I got distracted by the gun. You'll listen to her walking around on the phone, and she's got some officer's phone and she doesn't want to give it back. She wants to try to continue sort of the news camera views so she can try to, make some political hay out of this.
I am going to say.
Mayor Bass, I need to get my phone and we're departing.
Okay. All right. Mayor Bass.
Mayor Bass.
Any comment, Mayor Bass?
Thank you.
Mayor Bass, any comment?
Yes, my comment is they need to leave, and they need to leave right now. They need to leave because this is unacceptable.
Who did you speak with?
Just wait and see.
Mayor Bass,
They will be leaving soon.
Mayor Bass, who did you speak with on the phone just now?
Huh?
Who did you speak with on the phone?
The head of customs.
Wow.
The head of customs. They need to leave, and they need to leave right now, and they will be leaving soon. The guy already told you he was leaving. He said they're done with whatever they're doing. In any case, pretty silly nonsense. This is all political theater. It continues on. There was another thing that was going on recently in Texas, which many of you guys are aware of, the floods and stuff. I actually tried to talk about this on a couple of podcasts yesterday, and it's strangely emotional to try to think about. There was a story that was in Catholic Vote's email blast yesterday, talking about two little girls, 11 and 13, who go to school at the school that my siblings went to, the church that my family went to when I was in high school, and they passed away in the flood, and they were found holding each other's hands with rosaries, which is absolutely devastating. If you're a father, it's devastating if you have girls. It's devastating even to think about it. Just the amount of tragedy out there. If you watched my social media feed, you saw that our family member, my wife's godmother, Elizabeth Hastings, and Paul Welch, they lost their home, but are thankfully safe. So there's a lot of bad stories coming out of Central Texas right now. There are some sort of stories of heroics, which are kind of amazing too, as is often the case when this goes down. And this one is one of those that gives you, these are the people that we thought were signing up to serve in the military. These are the kind of guys that they didn't care about the politics of it, and it doesn't matter. Coast Guard member from New Jersey helped rescue 165 people. The call comes in, the mission is on. They jump into a helicopter and they go do the thing they were trained to do. This guy's got a great real story. We're going to do a little bit of the interview. It's a longer interview, so I'll probably post some of it over on KyleSeraphin.com because I ripped it for you guys off YouTube. This Coast Guard member joined a rescue crew. He's a rescue swimmer. He's being hailed as a hero. I guarantee you he doesn't think that way. I guarantee you can listen to him. He's just matter of fact. Like, that's what the job is. You got specialized training, you got specialized gear, you go into the water. If you've ever done a rescue operation in the water, and I've done maybe one or two that were done in like a off-duty capacity when I was in the Air Force. I actually used to do the rescue kayak thing for a Swiftwater tour that would come out of our base. That's just what you do. If you have the ability to handle water well, there's some of us that do. That's what you go do. This guy's awesome. He's young. He's got a mustache. He looks totally nondescript. He looks like a complete bro. It gives you a little bit of hope about the sort of generation that's out there behind. This quick story, I'll just tell you. The Guadalupe River surged on the 4th of July. Coast Guard rescue swimmer named Scott Ruskin, who's from New Jersey, flew with his team through severe weather to get to Camp Mystic, which is where those girls passed away, along with many others. They decided the best course of action was to leave me there. He's 26 years old. It was his first mission out of Naval Air Station Corpus Christi. He found himself on the ground in the flood zone, setting up triage, comforting many of the girls in the camp, and pulling some of them to safety. He said it's pretty traumatic. You got a lot of kids here probably having the worst day of their life. I got this little video clip here, which we'll try to show for you. So give me 1 second to be able to bring it up. I didn't mark this video. It's going to have to be a wing it. And there he is. Let's do this real quick. This is the story interviewed by CNN.
U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer and third-class petty officer Scott Ruskin and his team helped to air rescue 165 campers that were trapped just down the road at Camp Mystic. Notably, this is his first Coast Guard mission. He just graduated from rescue swimmer school. Petty Officer Scott Ruskin joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us and taking the time to speak to us live. We are so impressed to hear your story. We understand that your crew arrived on the scene at Camp Mystic via helicopter. Talk to us about the difficult conditions getting there and what was going through your mind, what you saw as you arrived at that scene.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, guys, thank you guys for having me on today. Just talking about how we kind of got there. We originally got a call from Task Force 1, which is like a local agency here in Texas, asking for additional resources. So they launched us from Coast Guard Air Station Corpus Christi at about 7 a.m. In the morning on the 4th of July. Kind of battled some weather with the crew. On the way in, we were obviously flying through the storm that was causing all the rain. So in the crew, we had, our aircraft leader, our co-pilot Blair Agujafor, and then also our flight mechanic Seth Reeves and myself. We're kind of on the crew, battling some pretty nasty weather, some of the worst I've ever experienced in my career so far. It took us about 4 different attempts to try to make our way into Kerrville. And finally, on the 4th attempt, with the help of the Air National Guard, the Army guys, we were able to kind of make our way into Mystic. So our original tasking was just to get to Camp Mystic. And we heard there was about 200 campers there, and they were in need of airlift. There was no other way to get them out. Bridges were gone, roadways were gone, and the water was coming up too high for boat rescue. So the only option was airlift. We kind of assessed the scene a little bit, had an internal crew discussion with the rest of the crew, with Ian, Blair, and Seth and myself. We decided the best course of action would probably be to leave me there. At the time, there was no triage coordinator, and just because, it was kind of hectic. A lot of people were needed on other assets and other airframes. We just decided that, hey, we can fit a couple extra kids if we leave me on scene. That air crew with Ian, Blair, and Seth kind of went to a more dangerous location to try to, airlift a few more people out of a tighter landing zone. And they were able to airlift about 15 children out of there, and they left me on scene at Camp Mystic.
That's what you'd expect. That's what you think. I actually knew one guy who was a rescue swimmer. I've known many people who are PJs that did similar sort of things. I've known a lot of combat medics. You'd expect that a guy who did all that training, who was called up. This is what we've called on this show before, the sort of the Super Bowl of masculinity. It's like you woke up one day like any other day. You put on your pants like any other day. The call comes in, and they're calling for you. And it's your job to step up and do the thing that you spent your life getting ready for. And so, do we have to leave you on scene? Yep, I'm the guy. Why? Because the manifest only allows a certain amount of weight on a helicopter. So if you leave that guy behind, how many more kids, if it's the case of mine, my girls are like 40 or 50 pounds. Can you throw 3 more, maybe 4 more children while this guy who knows how to handle himself goes and sets up triage? And it sounds like exactly what he did. It's the exact opposite, by the way, though, unfortunately, of what happened with the Austin Fire Department just south of me. There's a guy named Joel Baker, who's apparently the fire chief of the Austin Fire Department. His firefighters have now issued a vote of no confidence against him because this guy, Joel Baker, decided not to send rescue swimmers from the Austin Fire Department into this chaos. Now, there might be some logic behind that. Let's cut fairly. There's a decent job that you could say, or a decent argument, you could say that the waters were actually rushing down in areas near Austin, and you may in fact need your boat crews in your area. If that's the argument, they may be able to stand on a leg. But there are people inside the fire department, the firefighters union, it's called the Austin Firefighters Association. Their union president, Bob Nix, said that there is a standing order to deny deployments to save money. If money was the answer, money that would easily be refunded by the state of Texas, that there are all kinds of provisions and pots that would happen if you had a regional emergency like what was declared right there. And then the other problem being that you probably have some of the best trained boat crews, some of the most well-funded boat crews, and the most capable civilian rescue service out of Austin Fire. There's plenty of water around here. They've got the town lake. They've got rivers and things like that. And then, of course, they've just got the funding being close to the capital. If they turned it down over money, then heads should roll. And I think people are rightly looking for a place to put blame. At the end of the day, there's going to be no explanation that makes this thing right. I had a conversation with Garrett O'Boyle. I think I alluded to it the other day. When you see something like this, it makes you question, like, what on earth? How is this part of God's plan to have children be separated from their parents, to have parents survive when the kids do not, to have some parents survive and others not, and lose spouses and things like. I mean, it's absolutely devastating, and it gives people a door to walk into the darkest place possible, which is that if there is a God that allows this, how do you believe in that God? How do you not live your life angry? So, I think as compassionate human beings who are looking at this problem, I think it's worth saying, and maybe this has something to do with what's going on nationally, this question about the Epstein case that is closed and we can't talk about it. Compassion for the victims and having people have some peace despite there being what appears to be very little justice on this planet. I think that's anybody who's experienced some sort of injustice, you realize that your justice is not going to happen here. It's very rare that you'll be not only vindicated, but made whole on this earth. My friends are experiencing that. There are people now in Central Texas that are going to be experiencing that in a big way. There are people who are victims of child sex trafficking across this country that are feeling that wound right now. We have members of our family who have lost people and have held God responsible, which is not an unreasonable thing for a human being to do. You have to have empathy and compassion for that position. It may not be right because our minds are too small to grasp it, but God, it's difficult to find yourself in a spot where you cannot justify what's going on with the brains that we have, with the way that we look at the world. It just feels incompatible. So that's tough. I'm going to do a quick break over to my friends over at Patriot Coolers, just because we're paying the bills here and they're good people. They also take care of folks that take care of this country. They go after folks and help mobility issue challenged veterans. They will help a portion of every single one of their sales goes in to being donated annually to help retrofit houses for veterans who have issues with mobility, disabled vets, and so on. If you guys want to check out their products, they are the best. They're my favorite. I don't say that lightly. I don't shill for things that I don't like. We probably have a dozen of these things in the house. Plus, we have all their hard-sided coolers and backpacks and so on. It's patriotcoolers.com. Patriotcoolers.com. The promo code Kyle saves you 10%. I think my little brother just got some of these things the other day for his birthday. No big deal. Check them out at Patriot Coolers with an S on the end.com/KYLE. Let them know we sent you over there. If you guys need to buy something bigger, if you want to do a corporate gift, they will actually be happy to help you out. They will not cancel you for being a conservative if you are that kind of person. If you want a custom message that says something maybe a little bit more challenging than other companies like a Yeti would be worried about, yeah, you can come over and see my friends at Patriot Coolers. Let me know. You can reach out to the email that's in my Twitter bio, and I'd be more than happy to connect you with Gary, their product manager. Again, patriotcoolers.com, the promo code KYLE. Save yourself 10%. Check out something on there. It's a hot summer. You might want to keep some things in your life a little bit cooler, and that's a good way to do it. Let's see what else we got going on here. I want to make sure that I'm touching all the stuff because yesterday we kind of just got focused in on the one thing. I think that's it. Let's do the thing that we're not supposed to talk about. Let's talk about that thing. Because suddenly Democrats care. They suddenly are interested in Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to show you maybe one of the most dishonest pieces of video work with some really, really good commentary. So the audio and the video are very, very incongruous in my experience. When you look at it, what you're going to see is a woman who wrote the book, in fact, was interviewed for the article that I quoted yesterday. Her name's Julie Brown. She wrote a book about Epstein. She's very interested in the case. She's been following it for at least a decade now, if not longer. And she's giving a very sensible and rational and reasonable take. But then, of course, it's going to be on MSNBC with Chris Hayes, who is not an honest, rational actor. Seems like a political hack. He also looks like extra chubby and nerdy in this particular thing. And so while they're having this author speaking in a very rational way and laying out some of the case, the video that you are going to be missing if you are on audio only right now, if you're only listening to us, you're going to miss all of the video footage and photographs of Donald Trump standing next to Jeffrey Epstein because MSNBC can't do this honestly. I've looked at every single picture that's publicly available that is constantly trotted out by the political left regarding Trump and Epstein. And I stand by the analysis that if they had a way to tie him to it, they 100% would have. They would have cut off their nose to spite their face. This is my, with high confidence assessment, that if Donald Trump was specifically tied to Jeffrey Epstein in any of the investigations, they would have brought it out by now, because they've already shown the ability to discredit themselves, to sacrifice anything to get Donald Trump, including like assassination attempts, which look very shady and had some strange people who clearly had some sort of crossings with American intelligence. They would have cut off their nose to spite their face. They were willing to subjugate their credibility and destroy even the credibility of entire institutions to go after this guy. So I don't believe that's it. But it was brought up yesterday when I was having a discussion on an X space where a lot of people, we had a couple thousand people come in. The thing that is worth considering is donors or people that would be close to Donald Trump finding out that they were in there. I can't rule that out, and I don't think you can either. I don't know that is like an even weight, but it's at least a real possibility. Let's call it a legitimately interesting concern. Whether they would cancel the credibility of this entire administration over it is another problem. And I think that there was actually something more nefarious going on. What we're seeing at the moment, in my experience, in my opinion, there's a left narrative that is now being pushed. They have a desperate desire to tie Trump to this and to drive a wedge between the people that love Donald Trump and are now very incensed about the Epstein cover-up, gag order, etc. The second piece of it is, I do think that this was a deliberate leak when it was leaked using the cover of that Texas tragedy. I think it was leaked by people at either DOJ or FBI. It's sort of irrelevant to me. I think it was done with permission, and they expected to be able to post this the same way they've been able to get away with things like Steve Jensen. Remember, they promoted Steve Jensen with no press release. Posting something on the website is, in fact, a disclosure, and they did post it. The Axios leak, I think, was done specifically to give it to a left-leaning source that would immediately be discredited by the MAGA types. That's my analysis. You don't have to agree with it, but that's what I think happened. And I do that based on the idea knowing that Kash Patel was very concerned about media leaks before he was sworn in. And a friend of mine explained to him that media leaks are a tool that the director of the FBI can use in order to accomplish his goals. Giving it to Axios means you're immediately going to have guys like me. I went on Joe Pag's show yesterday. We had a really great interview, and I think we are very articulate in the issues and being very fair about it. It immediately makes you on the guard that these people might be liars. And so you get a softening of the blow of really, really bad news. And again, I think they used the cover of that Texas tragedy to make that part of the game. That doesn't stop the political left from asking about it now. The left can ask and the right can ask, not for the same reasons. We are currently not experiencing the same motivations, even though the actions are similar. And I know they're not the same motivations because we're going to see Chris Hayes do this video montage, which is pretty disgusting. All right, I've talked it up enough. MSNBC talking to downtown Julie Brown, as you guys said in the chat here.
With you, because I find myself with this story, it's such a lurid and horrible story in the actual facts. And then there's such a universe of conspiracy theorizing about it that I sometimes lose track of like which is in which column. So let me just start by asking, is the Department of Justice's declaration to you, there was no client list, there's nothing further to see here, credible? Have they been transparent? What is your read as someone who's reported on this more than almost anyone else?
Well, first of all, I think the Trump administration has made this one of the pillars of their administration. They have said from the get-go that they were going to be transparent, that they were going to release some files, at least some files, if not all the files. So they were the ones that raised this issue. Yes. It wasn't anybody else that did this. So it's sort of inexplicable now that all of a sudden they're saying, forget it, we're not going to do it. I mean, it raises more questions because it begs the question, what's in there that you're not releasing? And what, why should we take your word for it? For one thing, because this case has always been filled with all kinds of questions and cover-ups from the very beginning. I mean, the way that Jeffrey Epstein got off, the first time he basically served literally hardly any time. And that was due to a government cover-up. So it's ironic now that we are now saying, oh, the government looked at it and there's nothing to see here. I think that the public deserves to see really what are in the files, or at least they need to have a better explanation about why they're not releasing it.
That is a totally reasonable take, but it is paired with video of Donald Trump dancing at a party where Jeffrey Epstein was and talking to him and telling a joke. They ran the same clips multiple times. That was only about under 2 minutes. That was maybe 90, 98 seconds, something like that, of interview. And the background was already looped because there is so limited information tying Donald Trump, at least via like video and so on. That's part one. I've also looked at the ties and the dress that he's wearing each time he's with Epstein. There looks like there's about 4 documented instances of him hanging out with Epstein on camera of any kind. It doesn't mean he doesn't know him better, but it does go towards the same, and you can look how young Donald Trump was at that time. It does tend to show that they're deliberately doing a smear as opposed to doing honest coverage. Did they show him walking around? Did they show the picture from Epstein's apartment that had Bill Clinton in a dress? Like, no. Did they show the George Bush stuff? Absolutely not. They're focused in on getting a message. And what they wanted to do was say, she's saying really intelligent things. And she's making the argument that Jeffrey Epstein, like 17 years ago, was let out. And it specifically cited that he was doing things on behalf of the FBI, like many people do when they get jammed up with something that ends up with a federal nexus. So he was bailed out by the government previously. That's not negotiable. It's in the documents. So then the question is what else is there and why are we not hearing about it? I don't believe that suddenly Jake Tapper, who is more than happy to carry water for a failing Joe Biden, suddenly has these honest instincts. It doesn't hold any, it doesn't actually look legitimate to me. Here's CNN, Jake Tapper. Now he's got a lot of questions. Again, these people, this is also an Axios reporter who's being interviewed. All effeminate, soft men who now suddenly, they want to know the same thing that a lot of Americans do. Why do we care about it, by the way? Why do we care about Epstein? It should be noted. The reason why Jeffrey Epstein is a third rail for politics right now is because it's the cross-section of 3 things. Americans' instinct that justice is not blind, that the rich have a different system of justice and that they are not held accountable the way that the poor might be. So we know that is true, but that's a salient reminder and it's a shove in your face that that's happening. It's also a reminder that our intelligence agencies tend to lie to us and people have all these intersections. When you have enough money, you have enough power, you might also have a lot of influence in a system of government. So that's a corruption issue. So now you have injustice, you have corruption, and then the top of the triangle up here, which really ties this together in a way that is emotional for people, is that children were hurt, that young women, the one thing that Americans kind of almost all agree on, if they're being honest in their heart of hearts, even people on the left, women and children, for all of their equality talk, women and children are the thing that Western society protects above all else. We believe that that's true. We know that's true in our heart. If you're a man, you know that. That's why a rescue swimmer with a mustache got dropped off to try to help a camp full of young girls. Because your life would be forfeit for people who represent the thing that is most important in Western thinking, the future. Why are women and children the future? Very simply, children will grow up to be the people of the future. And women represent the possibility of bringing the next generation out. We protect women and children in Western and Christian societies. That's it. And so when those are the target, and then you have institutional corruption, and you have this system of obvious injustice, or let's say weighted justice based on the amount of means you have a perfect storm of regular people being outraged. Are there other traffickers? Yes. I listened to Alex Rosen yesterday. He does the I Fight for Kids. He goes out and finds pedophiles all over the place. There are priorities of human beings that are more evil than others. If you are a dirtbag living in a trailer park and you're getting child pornography from the third world text to you on WhatsApp, you are one type of a dirtbag, and I don't want you to be free. I want you to stop. But you have infinitely less danger to the community than someone who is trading in child pornography and consequently also grooming students because you're also a teacher at an elementary school. You need to be run over by a tank. And then you have a man who has the means, motives, opportunity to fly around the world, do whatever he wants, and the consequences are nothing. And the government comes out and says, there's no list of people that worked with him. There's no people that benefited from his disgusting habits. There are no additional prosecutions coming. And by the way, we know that he hung himself. We don't abide by that. And that's why there is going to be continual outrage. And I think that either a criminal genius working in the Trump administration was able to convince them that this was not as big a deal as it was. And that's a real easy thing to do. You can brief that something happens and downplay the significance of the thing. Donald Trump has a lot going on. It's very clear to me that sitting in the Oval Office must be an absolutely debilitating job. You're focused on 1,000 things at once, and you're certainly not going to focus on the things that Kyle Seraphin focuses on. Donald Trump doesn't have the same issues with young children. He certainly has more things going on. There's a war overseas. That's his purview. There's a war in the Middle East that just apparently got wrapped up. That's his purview. He's worried about an economy in things that do not even fathom. They don't even step into my space. But what I do have in my lane is justice, injustice, criminality, a failure to do the job of the agency that I used to work at. So it is inordinately capable of me to be just focused in on this thing in a way that he wouldn't. And if I was going to brief him the worst way possible and get the worst reaction, I'd tell him that people are basically over this, that we dropped the memo and, we don't expect any fallout. There's a thing in Texas. And so, just downplay it. That's the best move is at this point, the investigation is exhaustive. We've done all the work. No big deal. And I think that's exactly what he did in the White House. I'm going to show you some evidence of that in a second. First, we're going to do more dishonest coverage from CNN. Then I'm going to show you what I think is more honest coverage from Tucker Carlson. And then we're going to move in to what Donald Trump actually said and Pam Bondi shooting herself in the foot.
Alex, I have to say, I'm with the people that still have questions about this. I kind of don't buy the nothing to see here. And I don't know that the Justice Department helped their case. They released this video. Let's show it. It shows no one entered the area surrounding Epstein's cell in the hours before he died. But there's something significant about this videotape. What is it?
Well, here's one thing that some people on the internet are picking up on, which is that there is about a minute missing between 11:58 p.m. 58 seconds and 12 a.m. the night that Epstein was apparently killed or died.
Oh, killed or died. Okay, so look, are they doing that intentionally? Probably not. Was that a really good release? Was that a well thought out release? Do you think that Pam Bondi watched every single second of that video? Absolutely not. Zero chance. Zero chance. Do you think Dan Bongino sat and watched 12 hours of video, even sped up? Not likely. So now you have to wonder, did they release it with that 1 minute missing, knowing it was missing, knowing that it would make people go down a conspiracy rabbit hole and have all these questions? Or did they get lied to by the people who briefed them about the video, and then now they are scrambling because it makes them look less credible? I said it yesterday. The way the intelligence apparatus will work, the way that you make somebody turn to you and not look outward, is to isolate. And if you wanted to isolate somebody from their audience, if you wanted to make them look like an absolute fool and the only one you can trust is us, and us is the intelligence community, the analyst pool, the cadre of folks that work around you every single day, the FBI, your agency, if you wanted to make someone stand on an island by themselves and only have one person to turn to, the easiest way to do it is to make them lose face and discredit with all the folks that would otherwise agree with them, that would otherwise support them. This looks like a masterful job. I can't swear to it. I don't have evidence of that, but I do know the types of people that work in the FBI, and I do know the things that the FBI does. They find people in a tough spot and they lean on them. They find people that have patriotic motivations and they give an opportunity to serve. They find people who are looking for money and they give them money. When you have an agency that is willing to do the things that need to be done in order to get the needs that it wants to accomplish, and those needs are not the same as you, and they're not the same as Dan Bongino claimed that he wanted when he went in there. And they're not the same as what Patel said when he went in there. And they're not the things that Donald Trump said that he wanted. Donald Trump's Achilles heel continues to be a DOJ and an FBI that he either doesn't understand or cannot figure out how to wrangle. The only way to do it is after that Supreme Court decision. The question was, well, were they waiting? Were they waiting for that Supreme Court decision so they could come in and get rid of all these people? Why would you surround yourselves with snakes? Why would you surround yourself with poisonous, venomous snakes that will bite you when you are not looking? It's foolish because we already know that there's a blueprint to get rid of them. And how do you know? Here I sit. I am your blueprint. On April 15th of 2022, an allegation was made that I was inappropriate with a police officer off duty on body cam that showed nothing inappropriate. And 3 days later, my badge and my gun were gone. And I was kicked out of the field office, never to return. They did that in no time over Easter weekend on a federal Friday going into the first thing on Monday morning. You can move heaven and earth to get rid of employees should you so choose. You could suspend all of them with or without pay and let them wait until you got your Supreme Court decision and not be surrounded by vipers who are trying to bite you. And they didn't do that, which leads me to believe they got snowed. They got rickrolled by an agency that does it for a living. And these people are actually doing it not just for a living, but for their careers. Because if they fail, and if Trump's sort of de-weaponization happened, if you actually gutted the administrative state that you heard Dan Bongino talk about a dozen times, he's now the guy in the spot. He's the one who's driving that train. He is the deputy director, which runs the bureau. He's not the policy guy or the vision guy. He's the execution guy. He's the one that's supposed to do that do. D-O-do. Here's Pam Bondi saying the dumbest thing you could say when someone brings up that there's a missing minute. Again, intentional or otherwise, it sure as hell makes them look foolish. Whatever it was pitched, whether it was like, oh, they'll go down the rabbit hole and they'll think that Epstein's still whatever, or Hillary Clinton walked in the cell, or whatever it is. All of it is irrelevant to what people conclude. What it shows is incompetence, or it shows malfeasance. It shows a PR nightmare that they're not going to be able to handle. And here's Pam Bondi, like saying that the video is not conclusive. The thing that Patel, Bongino, and others have come out and said, we have seen conclusively that this video actually is him killing himself. Now she's going back on her word. Kind of like she said, the files are on my desk and they're not.
Every year, every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every year, every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
And that is the end of it. And we're not talking about it anymore because it is over. Is that the least believable? She repeated it's from 1999 twice in the same 60 seconds. You're telling me that in your suicide, your specialized housing unit, that's Suicide Watch, you've got video cameras that are running on videotape in 2019? In 2019, that it's 20 years old, that system is? Give me a break. We had digital video back then. We had no money for security cameras when I was living in Austin, in like close to downtown, in 2012, and we had digital video cameras. There's no way that they're retaping over the same thing in 2019. They're putting in what, a VHS cassette? All of this stuff is boomer theater, by the way. It's the same as there's a truckload of documents coming my way. There's no truckload of documents. It's coming over on a DVD. It's coming over on a hard drive. This is America in 2025. How are you selling that except to a Fox News audience that doesn't pay attention to like the reality around them, that they don't have a truckload of documents and that all of the videos they have are not on videotape, even if we say the words videotape. Let's go to the tape. There's no tape. It's digital. It's been digital forever. It's crazy to say that. I'm blown away. Anyway, Tucker Carlson's also not buying it. Again, you could be disingenuous and be on the Jake Tapper side, or you could be on the Chris Hayes side. From the left, you could be maybe more genuine, maybe not. I don't know. Tucker Carlson's been kind of like on his own thing. but this actually seems like a real concern. She brought up the fact that there were supposedly children involved. You can't walk away after you've said that. So you were either going to have to say, look, I was lying. I never watched the video. I don't know anything about it. Or we actually didn't do a conclusive investigation. We're just done with this. We're going to move on. And we hope you don't care. You could actually get more buy-in from that than say there were hundreds or thousands of children that were abused and nobody did it.
But how can you say that thousands of children were raped, but I'm not going to find out who raped them?
Yeah.
How can you say that?
I agree completely.
They said that. By the way, when Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused, I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of the people involved, as I've told you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped?
Yeah.
Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
It actually is as crazy as it could get. And it got even worse because we had this guy go out and sit in the White House. He's the boss. He takes a question from Pam Bondi. Whether this was scripted that he would do this or not is another question, because I don't think a lot of these things happen by accident. Whether he was down briefed on this, again, it wasn't a big deal. Here's Donald Trump not only saying that the stuff that's happening in Texas is more important, which leads me to the belief that it was actually leaked during that time on purpose, but he's also he's in shock that you would even care anymore. We've been talking about that creep forever. Gag order, hence the name of the episode today. Watch this.
Sure. Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of Saturday?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
That is an absolute terrible deflection. Obviously, we don't have a legitimate gag order on. That's the joke. That's what you're seeing on the screen here. He's berating this guy for asking a completely logical question within 24 hours of what would be probably considered one of the craziest things ever. And why? Because as that downtown Julie Brown said the other on the clip earlier, it's really straightforward. We sort of had a Trump administration come in campaigning on this, saying that this was a big deal, that the people who are now in charge of the Justice Department actually wanted to get to the bottom of it. They said it. Nobody made them say that. And why do they say it? Because, again, that triangle of problems: corruption, injustice, children and women victims. That's a big deal to regular people who may not know anything, and maybe it doesn't have any bearing on geopolitics. It's not going to stop a war with Russia and Ukraine. But they made it an issue. How do I know? Because the tape doesn't lie, even though it's not really tape. Here's some digital video that's not tape.
Well, the Epstein Black Book, on day one.
On day one, roll out the Black Book.
So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
There was an executive order demanding this being released. You have now the current sitting FBI director testifying under oath that he would in fact do something about this. That piece from Donald Trump saying it the way he did, it kind of rings true of this other person that I've been looking at as a bellwether, as sort of an indicator of what is the mind of those working in the FBI. Here's the mouthpiece of Dan and Cash talking about it before it was cool. You guys remember, we played it here first.
I also don't care about the Epstein information. I don't care about those files. I think it's irrelevant.
no one is going to be charged. Everyone got away with it. And I would much rather dig into January 6th, much rather dig into.
Like that. You've got to get, no.
Right? Julie Kelly went out and told you she's buddies with these people. Remember, there was a stupid disagreement about whether a search warrant was supposed to involve deadly force, which is happening on every single search warrant that Bongino and Patel are now issuing or are backing up with their agency. Every single damn search warrant they have will always have the deadly force policy on it. I promise you that. They haven't changed the FD 888. And Bongino decided to part ways and tell me that I was a piece of garbage because of that. They stood with Julie Kelly. Julie Kelly said the files were irrelevant. We knew here on this show that it was irrelevant to them, but not to us. That's crazy. That's why I said this, by the way, because I'm watching this. There is an ongoing tactic happening, and I'm going to tell you what it is. If you guys want to know what the info op is, you can watch it right here. I'm not revealing like some secret knowledge. I'm doing basic analysis. Dan Bongino is going to be done with the FBI before the end of the year. He's miserable. The people that are around him know that he's miserable. You can see it on his damn face. He's miserable. He goes out and does a Fox News hit. He looks tense and upset and hates it. There's no fun there. It's an awful job. It's a terrible job to be deputy director. Unfortunately, what we had was Alex Jones put out a fake headline of me saying this on his show the other day. I told you I would play it. I'll play it today. This got like 1 million views between multiple different accounts. And I didn't actually say that they're going to be removed. I said Dan's going to remove himself. He's going to find a family emergency. He's going to find a medical condition. He's going to say he has to run for office because he tried in there and he couldn't get it done. There's a couple of different ways that you walk out of this and try to save face. He is doing his best right now and tapping all the media contacts out there that he's got to run cover for him. Here's what I said, and then I'm going to show you my evidence that these guys are actually out there trying to do a spin tactic, and it's not going to work. It's not.
I think Bongino's gone by the end of the year. I think that was true before this.
Well, you think other things too.
I think that Patel doesn't make it past midterms if they decide to switch over. But I also see that Patel is actually kind of useful. He's actually kind of fitting into the role of FBI director, which is a guy that flies around on a jet and defends the FBI vigorously, doesn't do anything in particular that we're hoping he does, and takes credit for things the FBI always does, and gets him a new building. By the way, they're moving to the Reagan building. I don't know if people saw that. You guys probably covered this the other day. That's not
what we voted for. That's not what we wanted. You don't want them hanging out there. And so you're seeing this PR move, this ongoing PR campaign to say the FBI is doing an awesome job. I showed you yesterday. Dan said he's going to double down on his official account. Donald Trump said the FBI is going out and lowering murder rates, which is complete and utter bullshit. He's got Megyn Kelly, all the buddies. By the way, I've done a couple of interviews about this, and every single person, with the exception of Alex Jones, says, I love Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino's a great guy. Like, he's amazing. They all say the exact same thing. What's crazy is when Julie Kelly was going head to head and Dan decided to cut us out, us being me and the other FBI whistleblowers, who, by the way, he used to fall all over himself praising. Dan Bongino said Julie Kelly is a lovely person. She's an awful person. She's shitty. She's a shitty person. She sent me mean, threatening text messages in the middle of the night. She's crazy. She's a loser, lousy, ugly, mean-spirited Democrat, just horrifically awful person. and the cover was exactly the same. Here's Megyn Kelly and Andrew Klavan letting you know they just love Dan Bongino. And by the way, they're more than happy to leave Pam Bondi out in the wind, and Kash Patel would also might find himself in the wind because he's going to be fine. It's Dan that's never going to have a media career to come back to.
What she's doing, I got to be honest. But I really do trust Dan. Dan is a wonderful guy, and he's a very straight shooter. He's all heart. He's totally earnest. I don't believe Dan is lying to us. I don't. I don't know Kash as well. I don't mean to indict him at all. I'm just saying I don't know him the way I know Dan, who's been coming on the show for years. We've had many long hours and hours and hours. This is like you. I know him like I know you. Like, no one's going to convince me he would go out there and just blatantly lie. I don't believe it. So let's go down the line of he's telling the truth and Kash is.
About grifters, losers, zeros. People who do strange things with Hot Pockets in their basement when mom's not around. There's a lot of, what are you laughing at, you? There's a lot of these, and, I try to do my best to try to, give people a platform. But sometimes it goes wrong, and I think if you've seen what's happened with this former FBI guy, you see what I'm talking about. They're dead to me. They're dead to me. They're dead to me. I mean, it's really a shame to see these guys just go from, whistleblowers to, and then I guess they fall in love with themselves and just get crazy. It's just nuts.
It's so sad. I don't want to waste your time with a big backstory, but I'm done with these people. They're dead to me. I've never seen a group of people. There's this group of people who just, I don't know what happened. Like they went on a few TV shows and just got obsessed with being lunatics.
That's what we do here. I'm just obsessed with being a lunatic. That's why I sit here. That's why I bought the equipment. That's why I talk to you every day. I'm obsessed with being a lunatic.
I've got some evidence here that the FBI may not only be spying on whistleblowers, but are they spying on Donald Trump again, too? Because whenever you read the New York Times, there's always like a signal you should be paying attention to. Folks, I got a great guest on my radio show later today. You know Kyle Seraphin, FBI whistleblower, right? This guy has done more to expose FBI malfeasance than any whistleblower I've seen from the FBI in a really long time. He's a former agent. He knows all the ins and outs of what they're up to. He's going to be on later, and I'm going to get to later. It appears the FBI is spying on these whistleblowers. For what reason? I don't know. I don't talk about what I don't know. I can only speculate. But why else would you be spying on whistleblowers other to see them what they're blowing the whistle on and what they're up to in an effort?
No shit. I mean, there's no other way to say it. The FBI said there was a problem. The FBI investigated us. Now Dan's part of the FBI, and he's out there smearing us. And I'm telling you, I got word yesterday from a very connected person in Washington, D.C. I just don't want to out his name because it's not relevant and it won't benefit him at all. They're shopping around the story that I shot at someone or that I shot someone. And here I am walking free, folks. I got guns all around me because I'm not a felon. Nobody ever put me in handcuffs. Apparently, I took a pot shot at somebody who was an FBI agent. And I'm free. And that's why I had to be removed, because I have character issues, which, by the way, coincided with after me going to Congress, showing that the FBI was full of criminal malfeasance and that the Attorney General at the time was breaking the law, engaged in perjury. You know who also is engaged in perjury? Kash Patel. During his confirmation. If he would lie to the Senate to be confirmed to be the FBI director, you think he wouldn't lie to you? And we know they are. They just launched this yesterday. The same person, by the way. Watch for right-wing propaganda coming our way. Here we go. FBI launches criminal investigations of John Brennan and James Comey. DOJ sources. The CIA director, John Ratcliffe, referred Brennan for criminal investigation to the FBI, sources told Fox Digital. It's the same source that has done all of the leaks and all of the breaks and all of the exclusive stories on behalf of Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino being the current deputy director of the FBI. How do you know, Kyle? Oh, because here she is, a very pretty brunette woman named Brooke Singman. She looks like the kind of pretty brunette women that Dan seems to have around him, whether it be Evita Campos Duffy or whether it be his wife. Like, that's his thing, it looks like. And that's who he went to. I'm sure he knew her from his Fox time. Can't confirm that. Here's her most recent headlines for the last few days. FBI launches criminal investigation of John Brennan. Kash Patel to shut down the Hoover building. Move headquarters across the street. FBI blocked probe into Chinese 2020 election meddling. Trump secures record-shattering $1.4 billion. Then it goes on, Florida man indicted, FBI, 8647 posts. And there she is. So there you go. They're running this story. There's two stories that are being run. Number one, we went after Comey and Brennan. We're going to hold the swamp accountable. That's part one. Yeah. Mark your calendars. Corruption will pay. Not Jeffrey Epstein, by the way. He's not going to pay. Corruption, injustice, children being trafficked. No big deal. No, we're going to go after James Comey, who definitely worked within his legal scope of authority, which we disagree with, but he did it anyway. He's not likely criminally liable for any of this stuff, and it's all gone by. And what's the other thing? The homicide rate is down. Lowest homicide rate in history. By the way, I went back and typed in violent crime rates, United States. It's been declining since 2020. It's been on a beeline for the bottom of the curve. And for anyone that's out there touting this, I absolutely guarantee it. We'll go pull the tapes later. I'll find a Dan Bongino talking about it. You know that the FBI lies because the FBI gives you bullshit information. They cherry pick it. They're not interested in a political agenda. They're interested in one thing, keeping their flippin' budget turned on. Remember, FBI data shows sharp drop in violent crime, but the steepness is questioned. That was from June of 2024, coming from CBS News. Then you go over to Fox. FBI quietly updates crime data to show a big jump in violence under the Biden-Harris administration. Shocking, says Emma Colton. And that was in October of 2024. Why would it be shocking? It's really straightforward. The universal crime rates, the UCR, the Universal Crime Report that's put out by the FBI, is updated on a quarterly basis. But not every single organization and not every single law enforcement area puts in on a quarterly basis. So you get obviously low numbers. And then not all of them are required to put it in the first place, which means you got about a third of the major police departments in the country not reporting violent crime, to include homicides. And then the last thing is the FBI doesn't investigate homicides. That's not what they do. There are a few narrow jurisdictions where the FBI is able to take homicide and bring it to what we call a federal nexus. Some of them are RICO/organized crime. There's a few in there, but it's not significant enough to talk about everyday homicides that happen in this country. That's not what it is. The second thing is on Indian reservations, which do not constitute a big part of the population and certainly don't constitute a huge chunk of homicide rates in the United States. And the last one is on like federal properties like national parks. Those are your federal nexuses in a brief nutshell. Generally speaking, you can say that FBI agents, the vast majority of FBI agents, will never touch a homicide ever. They'll never see a dead body. They'll never be part of it. It's not common. There are a few exceptions, and the people who want to call that out and act like that's normal don't speak honestly. What's honest is the crime data doesn't show anything. But that's what they're out there hawking. That's what they're telling you. They're doing a great job. It's a cover-up mode. It's an attempt to make these people look better because they're in real deep, deep crap with the MAGA base, with the regular people base, with even people on the left who are now going to suddenly be interested in a story that they weren't previously interested in. And it's a real big problem, folks. Do not put this hat on. Do not become this meme. The Epstein files don't exist. They never existed. If they did exist, they wouldn't be important anyway. Don't become the non-player character. Don't be the mindless drone. Ask simple questions. If it was interesting before, it's interesting now. It doesn't have anything to do with Elon Musk. It doesn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with a person who appears to have done some really, really awful things, and you are owed the answer. Why? Because the people who are in the position to give you the answer told you they'd give it to you. The end. If you want to do promises made and kept, then make sure that you hold them accountable. That's what I've got to say for today's show. I got a fun palate cleanse for you that's just going to make us laugh, and it's going to make fun of people that we don't like. So that's really easy. Before we do, I'd remind you and ask you very nicely, if you're watching over on Rumble, share the show on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You can also give us a thumbs up, hit the like. I'd appreciate it. YouTube, you guys are awesome about doing this. Your numbers are great when you guys are on there. There are more people hitting the like per capita on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. Locals, I'll post you that interview with the Coast Guard rescue swimmer because it's great. It's nice to see heroism. We'll post that over on kyleseraphin.com. It'll be a free link for anybody who wants to go see it. Costs you nothing to be there, to be part of the community. And lastly, Spotify is where our audio is best found. Why? Because you can go between audio and video as you choose, as you're driving. It gives you both. It's a free option in the app. You can stream it from there. You don't even have to download it. Stick around for this little palate cleanse here. We might as well. Let's find something we can all laugh about. How about men who cross their legs? I assume these guys sit down to pee as well. So does Adam Carolla. If there was ever going to be a comedian who politically sits in my spirit animal space, this guy's it. Here we go.
All progressive guys cross their legs like women. What they do, literally, it's a sign. It's I cross my legs. As I cross my leg, it'll hike up my top leg, pant leg, and it'll expose my colorful sock. And then you'll know where I'm at. By the way, you can watch them all. Watch Gavin Newsom. Watch them all. Watch them how they cross their legs, and then watch how Trump crosses his legs. He doesn't cross legs. He does wide
this.
open.
He puts a diamond in front of his testicles.
Right.
He sits like this every time.
So there's Trump with the diamond. His diamond, which accentuates his nutsack. And then you have Justin Trudeau signaling, I have no balls. I have no balls. I will sit in this position for 4 hours, cut off the circulation of my nutsack because I do not have balls, but I have colorful socks, so you know where I'm at. Ladies, gay community, you know where I stand. Look at my socks and watch me cross my legs like a chick.
I don't think he's wrong. Like I say, I love people that speak plainly. That's what it is. Look for the diamond nutsack thing. By the way, he's right. That is a trend, and it's really weird looking. It looks out of place if you're a man because you think, I'd never sit like that. That's awkward. If you sit with your leg crossed, you sit with it like a broad kind of diamond looking shape or a broad triangle out there. Anyway, good for them. All right, folks, again, one more appeal. Hit a like. If you've never joined the show live, by the way, and you've listened to this part, check us out live, 0930 Eastern Time. We're on all those channels that I recommend. You can watch us over on X, the X people. Give us a like as well. Share it around. We appreciate that. I see some of you guys retweet it in the morning. Appreciated. It's at Kyle Seraphin over on X, so it's x.com/Kyle Seraphin there. Have a great day. I hope you do. Hope this gave you something to think about. If you don't agree, put it down in the comments too. I'll read those as well. God bless you, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.